Chapter 1. The Maid from Another Star. The orbital station Aegis Prime hung above the gas giant like a crown of steel and light, its spire stabbing into the darkness of space. The hum of its engines was constant, low, thrumming, like the heartbeat of a slumbering giant. Inside its endless corridors of alloy and glass, cultures from 100 worlds brushed shoulders in neon marketplaces that smelled of ozone, burning spice, and oil. To most, humans were still newcomers. Fragile Man was tolerated more as curiosities than equals. Ethan Cole tightened his grip on the battered tool case, slung over his shoulder as the lift door slid open. The scent of polished metal and a faint trace of alien incense drifted in. He stepped into the quarters that had been assigned to him, narrow, modest, tucked in one of the lower spires where workers lived in quiet anonymity. She was already there, waiting. The alien maid stood by the window, her tall, slender frame outlined by the swirl of the planet's storms below. Her skin shimmered faintly silver in the light, as though liquid metal flowed beneath it. Her eyes, obsidian with flecks of violet, watched him with a stillness that unsettled him. "You are Ethan Cole," she said, her voice clear, melodic, but formal. "Assigned engineer to this district. I am Lyra of Xeryn, sworn in service." Her words carried the weight of ritual, like someone reciting lines taught since birth. Ethan set his tool case down with a dull thud and rubbed the back of his neck. "I didn't request a maid," he said, "and I sure as hell don't need one." Lyra tilted her head, the faintest ripple of confusion flickering across her otherwise flawless composure. "It is not about need. It is about order. The Xeryn ensure those under their sphere maintain discipline. You will find my presence non-intrusive." Ethan chuckled dryly, glancing at the neat rows of supplies she'd already organized on the counter. "You've been here all of 5 minutes and already tidied up. I guess that makes 2 of you who don't sleep much." Her gaze lingered on him, long enough for him to feel it. Aliens often looked at humans that way, like studying a species at the edge of extinction, equal parts fascination and pity. But in her eyes there was something else. Curiosity, maybe, or doubt. The silence stretched. Outside the viewport, the station's shield flared as debris from the gas giant storms brushed against it, casting pale light across Lyra's features. Ethan broke the quiet with a sigh. "Look, Lyra, you follow your codes, I'll follow mine. Just don't expect me to bow or chant prayers before I fix a conduit. Humans are stubborn like that." Something flickered at the corner of her mouth, a gesture so faint he almost missed it. Not quite a smile, more like the ghost of one. "Stubborn," she echoed softly. "Yes, I have heard that word used for your kind." The hum of the station deepened, as if punctuating the unspoken truth. This pairing was no accident, and neither of them yet knew what it would mean. Chapter 2. The Accidental Glimpse. The corridors of Aegis Prime never truly slept. Even in the deepest hours of station night, neon signs pulsed outside portholes, and a faint tang of ionized air lingered where maintenance drones floated past. In Ethan's quarters, however, the world was hushed, save for the steady hum of the station's reactors and the faint crackle of an old, human-made speaker. Ethan sat hunched at his desk, a faded photograph between calloused fingers. The image was nearly worn smooth, its edges creased from years of handling. A family he hadn't seen since Earth, smiling against the backdrop of a long-dead field. His voice was low, almost a whisper, carrying a tune that had no place among the stars. It was a lullaby, simple, fragile, imperfect, but wholly human. He didn't hear the door hiss open. Lyra stepped inside, carrying a folded stack of freshly sterilized garments. She froze the instant she saw him. His shoulders bowed, his lips moving to an alien melody. The song seemed to thrum to the recycled air, wrapping the small cabin in something almost sacred. For a heartbeat, she could not breathe. Her people never sang. Not openly, not without punishment. Emotion was weakness. To see it displayed so nakedly, so defiantly, felt like stumbling upon a forbidden shrine. Ethan noticed her then. His voice faltered, the words dying in his throat. He turned, eyes flashing with surprise before shame crept in. He set the photo down too quickly, as if he'd been caught in something indecent. "Guess you weren't supposed to see that," he muttered, running a hand through his hair. Lyra did not move. The garments in her hands trembled slightly, though her face remained composed. "That sound, what was it?" "It's called singing," Ethan said, his voice rough. "A way humans remember things, feel things." Her eyes narrowed, not in disdain but in disbelief. "You expose your sorrow willingly, without fear of losing control." Ethan gave a humorless laugh. "Control's overrated. Sometimes you need to let it out before it rots you inside." The silence stretched, filled only by the distant groan of the station supports. Lyra lowered the garments onto the table, her movement slow, deliberate, like a priestess setting down an offering. Her gaze lingered on the photograph. "They are your blood?" she asked softly. Ethan nodded, throat tightening. "Were. A long time ago." Something shifted in her expression. Not quite pity. Her people did not believe in such indulgence, but recognition. She, too, carried memories never spoken aloud. When she finally stepped back, her voice was quiet, strained. "Humans are reckless creatures, yet there's power in this recklessness." Ethan met her gaze. For the first time since she'd been assigned to him, he felt she wasn't just watching a specimen. She was seeing him. And in that fragile moment, beneath neon shadows and the endless hum of alien machinery, a bond neither fully understood began to form. Chapter 3, A Bond in Shadows. Lyra avoided Ethan for 2 station cycles after she witnessed the song. She performed her duties with mechanical precision, polishing surfaces, sterilizing his tools, preparing nutrient packs. Yet she never lingered, never met his gaze. The silence between them pressed heavier than the steel bulkheads. Ethan noticed. He always noticed. One evening, after a long shift repairing power conduits in the lower spires, he returned to his quarters and found her seated by the viewport, the gas giant storms casting silver light across her skin. She had not heard him enter. Her posture was rigid, hands clasped too tightly in her lap. "You've been quiet," Ethan said, setting his tool case down. Her shoulders tensed, but she did not rise. "It is not my place to intrude upon private rituals." He frowned, pulling off his gloves. "Singing isn't a ritual. It's just part being human." Her eyes flicked toward him, dark and searching. "Part of being human," she echoed softly. "Strange. Among my kind, sound is discipline, order chants, formal commands. But what you did, it was raw, unrestrained, dangerous." Ethan chuckled, though there was no humor in it. "Dangerous? That was the softest thing I've done in months." Lyra's hands unclasped slowly. She studied them as though the memory of his song still clung to her. Finally, she asked, "Why do you show weakness? Would it not make others see you as prey?" He leaned against the wall, watching her carefully. "Because it's not weakness. It's proof we're alive. Pain, joy, grief, they remind us what we're fighting for." Her expression wavered, a crack forming in her perfect composure. The stormlight caught the faint tremor of her lips. She opened her mouth, closed it again. Ethan waited. At last, her voice came low, almost broken. "When I was a child, I once sang a simple tune. My mother struck me for it. She said my voice was shameful, unfit for Xeryn ears. I never sang again." Ethan's chest tightened. He stepped closer, careful not to crowd her. Maybe it wasn't shameful. Maybe it was beautiful, and they just couldn't handle it. Her head turned sharply, eyes wide at his boldness. No one had ever spoken against Xeryn law in her presence, not without fear. Yet Ethan's voice was steady, even gentle. "Do you remember the song?" he asked. Lyra hesitated. Her throat worked as if the memory itself hurt to summon. Then, haltingly, she let out a single note, thin, trembling, like glass about to break. It was enough. Ethan smiled softly. "There it is. That's yours." Doesn't matter what they said. For the first time, Lyra looked away, not in disdain, but to hide the shimmer in her obsidian eyes. Her voice, when it returned, was barely audible. "You risk too much, human. But perhaps that is why you survive." Outside, lightning forked across the gas giant's clouds, illuminating them both in a blaze of silver. Inside, the distance between them felt smaller, the silence less sharp. Something fragile had been shared, something forbidden, yet undeniably human. Chapter 4, The Station in Crisis. Aegis Prime was never silent, but tonight its voice changed. The steady hum of reactors became a violent shudder, vibrating through steel corridors and rattling the glass panes of neon-lit walkways. Sirens wailed long, descending tones meant to pierce through the din of thousands of languages. Overhead, crimson emergency lights spilled across polished walls like blood. Ethan staggered as the floor pitched beneath him. He was halfway through calibrating a coolant valve when the alarms triggered, but instinct told him this wasn't routine. This was sabotage. Lyra appeared in the doorway, eyes wide, her silver skin glinting in the flickering light. "The lower reactor spire has been breached," she said, her voice taut but disciplined. "We must retreat to the upper levels. Security will contain it." "Contain it?" Ethan barked, throwing his tools into a pack. "If the coolant regulators are fried, containment won't mean squat. The whole spire will go up like a torch." She froze. Obedience warred with fear in her eyes. "Your orders are to evacuate, not to interfere." Ethan zipped the pack, slinging it over his shoulder. "Yeah, well, humans don't do orders very well." Before she could stop him, he was running down the corridor. The walls trembled with every pulse from the reactor core below, the sound like a giant's heartbeat gone wild. Smoke hissed from vents. Sparks rained where conduits burst in showers of blue-white arcs. They reached the access shaft just as two alien engineers fled past them, shouting in their own tongue, eyes wide with panic. Ethan caught fragments of their words. "Unstable core breach, nothing can be done." "Nothing, huh?" Ethan muttered. "We'll see about that." The maintenance chamber was a chaos of steam and sparks. Gravity flickered. Tools floated, then clattered as the artificial field struggled to stabilize. The core loomed at the chamber's heart, a pulsing sphere of energy contained by magnetic bands, its glow sputtering like a candle in a storm. Lyra clutched the frame of the doorway, her training screaming for her to pull him back. Yet she watched as Ethan tore into controls with nothing but a manual override toolkit, his hands moving fast, almost reckless. "No safety protocols," he muttered, sweat running down his temple. "No AI bypass. Just wires and fire." "Ethan, stop. You will kill yourself." He grinned without looking back. "Then I'll do it loud enough they'll never forget what a human can do." He jammed two cables together, sparks erupting in a searing flash. The reactor screamed, the hum rising to a pitch that made the walls tremble. For a moment, Lyra thought the chamber would detonate. Then silence. The glow of the core steadied. The alarms dulled. The station's heartbeat slowed to something calm, controlled, alive again. Ethan slumped against the console, breathing hard, such streaking his face. "Told you. Sometimes all it takes is stubbornness and a pair of steady hands." Lyra stared at him, stunned, in her world. Only obedience and order preserved life. Yet this human, reckless, fragile, unshielded, had done what her finest engineers would not dare. In the lingering silence, filled only by the faint hum of the stabilized core, one truth seared itself into her mind. Humans were dangerous not because of strength, but because of their refusal to bow to impossibility. Chapter 5, The Price of Defiance. The great tribunal chamber of Aegis Prime was a cathedral of steel and light. Vaulted arches of alloy soared above, alive with shifting holograms that projected the stern faces of the Xeryn overseers. Their voices echoed through the chamber in layered tones, translated into every tongue yet somehow still alien. Ethan stood alone in the center of the hall, a lone figure in grease-stained clothes and a singed jacket, dwarfed by the towering dais. His hands were still blackened from the reactor chamber, a smear of soot across his cheek, like a soldier's war paint. The way 100 eyes pressed down on him, alien merchants, officials, soldiers, all whispering reckless human, foolish creature, dangerous anomaly. Lyra stood behind him, straight-backed, her silver skin catching the sterile glow of the tribunal lights. She had been ordered there as witness, not participant. Yet her gaze clung to Ethan's profile, tracing the stubborn tilt of his chin, the set of his jaw. "Ethan Cole of Earth," intoned the High Arbiter, her voice like chimes overlaid with steel. "You defied evacuation protocol. You interfered with the sacred mechanisms of the reactor. By your uncontrolled actions, you endangered the lives of thousands." Ethan's laugh was sharp, bitter. "Endangered? Lady, I saved them. That reactor was minutes from going critical." A low ripple of disapproval swept the chamber. The Arbiter's eyes narrowed. "Your kind mistakes chaos for triumph. You did not act with sanction. That is your crime." Ethan clenched his fists. "If sanction means sitting on your hands while people die, then yeah, I'm guilty." The silence that followed was suffocating. The Arbiter raised her hand. "Then punishment must be delivered. You will be confined to the lower spires. Restricted, monitored. Your presence among the higher orders is revoked." The verdict fell like a blade. Ethan's chest burned with fury, but he bit back words that would only worsen his fate. His gaze flicked to Lyra, just for a heartbeat, and that look, half defiance, half exhaustion, pierced something in her that she had long buried. The chamber awaited her testimony. She was meant to confirm his disobedience, to seal the judgment with truth. The Xeryn Code demanded it. Her honor demanded it. But her voice betrayed her. "I will not condemn him." Gasps rippled like thunder. Lyra stepped forward, her slender frame trembling. Yet her voice rang clear. "He saved us. All of us. Where we faltered, he acted. You call it reckless. I call it courage. You call it weakness. I see strength." The Arbiter's eyes darkened, and her voice turned sharp. "Lyra of Xeryn, do you defy your oath to the Council?" Lyra's hand trembled before it steadied at her side. Her gaze locked on Ethan's. "Yes, if honoring my oath means dishonoring the truth, then I will bear exile." The chamber erupted. Voices collided, outrage clashing with disbelief. But Ethan heard none of it. He only felt her words settle into his bones like fire. She had chosen him, not duty, not law, but him. For the first time in years, Ethan felt less alone in the galaxy. Chapter 6, Across the Stars, Together. The docking ring of Aegis Prime stretched like a glowing spine along the station's belly, its corridors lined with starships great and small. Automated loaders trundled by on magnetic tracks, the air heavy with the tang of ion exhaust and lubricants. Announcements droned overhead in a dozen alien dialects, calling out departure schedules. Ethan walked among the crowd with a battered duffel slung over his shoulder, every step echoing with the knowledge that he had been cast out. His boots clanged against the grated floor, the hum of the station dimming behind him with every stride. Exile had a way of stripping a man bare, but this time he wasn't leaving alone. Lyra matched his pace, her long strides graceful despite the weight of her choice. She no longer wore the formal silken wrap of a Xeryn maid. Instead, she had bound herself in a simple travel cloak, her silver skin catching threads of light as ships roared into the void beyond the docking bays. Her eyes stayed forward, steady, though the faintest tremor in her fingers betrayed what she had sacrificed. "Still time to change your mind," Ethan said quietly, though he kept his gaze ahead. "You walk away now, they'll take you back. Pretend this never happened." Lyra's voice was soft, but unyielding. To pretend would be the greater exile. My place is with truth, and with you. The words hit him harder than he expected. He swallowed against the tightness in his throat, his chest burning with something more than pride. They reached Bay 47, where a worn freighter waited like a scarred veteran of too many battles. Its hull was patched in half a dozen alloys, paint faded, engines rumbling low as if eager to escape. Hardly glamorous, but to Ethan it was freedom. As they boarded, the ramp shuddered beneath their steps. Inside, the ship smelled of ozone and old oil, panels humming with uneven life. Ethan dropped his bag and ran a hand along the console, like greeting an old friend. Lyra lingered by the viewport, gazing out at the swirling storms of the gas giant below, then up at the starfield beyond. "You mean to make a home out there?" "Not just a home," Ethan said, sliding into the pilot's seat. "A life that's ours. No overseers, no codes. Just stars, hard work, and maybe a little singing." She turned at that, her obsidian eyes shimmering faintly. A small, hesitant smile brushed her lips, the first true one he had seen. "Then teach me your songs, human. If we are to wander, let me carry them too." The ship's engines roared, vibrating through the deck plates. Aegis Prime shrank in the viewport, its glittering spires fading against the dark. The freighter angled toward the open void, where countless suns burned with promise. Ethan reached across the console, his hand brushing hers. No words were needed. The hum of engines, the pulse of the stars, and the fragile bond between them spoke louder than any decree. Together, they left the old laws behind. Together, they began. The freighter drifted beyond the last beacon of Aegis Prime, its patched hull glowing faintly in the light of a distant sun. Inside, the hum of the engines was steady, a heartbeat that belonged to no world, only to them. Artificial gravity pressed gently against their feet, and through the viewport stretched a horizon of alien constellations, new maps for a future not yet written. Ethan leaned against the console, grease still on his hands, but his gaze was softer than it had been in years. Beside him, Lyra stood in silence, her silver skin haloed by starlight. They had left judgment behind, but the weight of choice still lingered in the air between them. "You realize," Ethan said quietly, "we just traded one exile for another." Lyra turned, her obsidian eyes steady. "Exile means nothing if we carry each other. You showed me that." For the first time, she reached for his hand, not as servant, not as witness, but as equal. Her fingers trembled, but she did not let go. The freighter's sensors chirped, scanning the endless black, but neither of them looked away. Ethan's voice was low, raw, the words etched with finality. "Then let's stop surviving, Lyra. Let's start living." A smile ghosted across her lips, fragile yet radiant. "Teach me, human. Sing me the songs of your people." Outside, the ship angled toward the unknown. Alien voices crackled faintly on the comms, neon cities shimmered on the edge of distant worlds, and the stars themselves seemed to listen. Together, they stepped into the infinite. Two outcasts, bound by something greater than law. The reckless, unyielding spark of humanity.